Hey everybody, well, I've been experimenting, and in this video we're going to look at a method in which you're going to be able to create any visualization or interaction you need within SharePoint Online. So stick with me, and by the end of this video you're going to be creating user experiences and interfaces which are more engaging than you ever thought possible. Question time. Have you ever been frustrated by the lack of available settings within certain web parts? Let's take the hero for example. Are you fed up with only having 5 tiles available? Well, how about 6, 7, or dare I say it, 8? Maybe you want a way to present a process that's engaging and not just another static image. Or maybe you want to create a centerpiece of navigation that steps outside of the constraints of Microsoft styling. But with this method, it's all possible and even more. And that's why I'm calling this SharePoint's secret weapon. So let's get to it. This video is sponsored, well, by me and the Academy 365 SharePoint Site Builder Masterclass. This is a course that I've put together which is for anybody who has inherited a SharePoint Online site or is building a department site within their intranet. The course focuses on the most common requirements that I see again and again, and step-by-step how to build them. There's a big focus on user experience within this course, and I've designed it so you don't have to be a techie to take it, right? This is aimed at any business user who wants to up their game within SharePoint. If you're interested, there's a link below along with a tasty discount. Now back to the video. Okay, so what are we actually covering in this video? Well, the first thing that we're going to cover is the method, so you can get a quick idea of what's involved. Then we're going to look at some examples of the output or my experiments. I've been playing with this over the last month or so, and I've come up with a few ideas, so we're going to run through them so you see what the end result will be. Then we're going to get hands-on, right? We're going to build our first UI experience step by step. Then we're going to look at how we add this experience to our site. We'll look at some configuration changes you need to make and some other sneaky settings that will get you going. And finally, we're going to wrap up with my thoughts on this. So like I said, I've been experimenting with it, and I think there are some considerations you should know and just be aware of. So we'll wrap up with that. So let's look at the method. This method consists of 3 parts. So the first part is going to be where we're going to make use of a design software called Figma, and we're going to leverage its design and prototyping capabilities to build our user experience. For the second part, we're going to make use of the embed web part within SharePoint Online, and we're going to use this to add our Figma prototype to our page. And the third part is we're going to make some configuration changes to our site and a small change to the embed code so that everything works seamlessly so people will never know it's an embedded UI. It's going to be great. So 3 simple parts, but it's quite easy. Don't worry, I'm going to walk you through every one of them step by step. So first things first, you might be asking yourself, what is Figma? Figma is a revolutionary cloud-based design software that is best in class for creating user interface and experience design. It's used by designers all over the world. For me, it's my go-to choice when I want to visualize anything. It's really easy to learn. If you've watched any of my videos, every image within the video and every thumbnail, it's all been created with Figma. The best part about Figma is it's free. Okay, so let's look at some of my examples or experiments with this method. So the first one is what we're going to call the Hero Web Part Plus. So here we can see the standard Hero Web Part, and it's displayed with its maximum of 5 tiles available. So I've created a version of this where we've added an extra tile. So here you can see the version where we've got this extra tile in here, number 6, but we don't have to stop there. Here we have a version of the web part with a 7th tile with lots more real estate for them fancy looking links. But let's be crazy, okay? Let's not stop at 7. How about we look at 8, which would look something like this. Now I stopped at 8 because I couldn't take the excitement of even thinking about a 9th, but you can configure this, or you can add any layout or combination of tiles that you'd like. So moving on to our next experiment, we're going to look at how to display or communicate a process that's a bit more engaging than a static image. So coming here to our brand strategy page, we might want to introduce a process for UX design that will help people understand what it is and provide them with resources to it. So here we have our process here, quite simple, but it's interactive, okay? That's the secret sauce here. So if I click on this part of the process, I get this nice little interface here where I learn a bit more. I have these links which could link to documents or pages within our site. Also a nice outline of the process itself in here. Similarly, I can progress the process. I can click here and I can see what ideation is all about, or carry on and see what prototyping is all about, all with the ability to come home. So it's a nice little way of, displaying a process and make it interactive, okay? So people enjoy the experience and everything is laid out nicely. And then finally, we'll look at the last experiment, which is that centerpiece of navigation, okay? So coming here to our marketing expression page, down here is our custom piece of navigation. We can can style this any way we want, add in the text we want, it's all good. So again, a nice way to have a good collection of links, but a bit more context than we get than the hero web part. And it's a nice centerpiece of navigation that fits seamlessly into the page. That's one of the key things here. So all of this was a quick bit of a test just to see what was possible. But after creating these, I now see that basically anything is possible. If you can draw it within Figma, you can have it displayed within SharePoint, which is brilliant. It opens up endless possibilities. And now for the fun bit, we're going to build our first experience. Let's look at building the Hero Web Part Plus. I hope you're able to contain your excitement as much as I am. So what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to go to figma.com, okay? So you can create your free account and get your hands on this software. So what you're going to want to do is, like I said, come to figma.com and click on Get Started for Free, and then just create an account. You'll just be asked to verify your email address. And once you've verified your email and answered a few onboarding questions, you'll get to an interface that looks something like this. Now, we're not going to focus too much on an in-depth tour of Figma. I'll let you explore all the wonderful capabilities at your convenience. You can just follow along with me and we'll have that UI up and going in no time. But when you come in here, anyway, this is a dashboard. You're going to go to add a design file, and we can give it a name here. So click where it says untitled. We're going to say Hero Web Part Plus. And you'll see here it's created in our drafts. We have a project that was created automatically when we signed up. So I can click down and I can say move to project, and we'll just select our team project here. I'll say move. We're good to go. There's going to be all these little getting started wizards. You can have a look through them if you want. It'll give you a nice little tour. Okay, so now you're in here. So what next, right? Well, let's just have a little look at what's on this page, right? The page is made up of a couple of different areas. The main important area is in here, okay? This is our canvas. This is where we draw our pictures and create our UIs. Over on the left-hand side is a navigation. This shows us everything that is on this page, and it can be split up into layers and assets, which we'll cover in a minute. But layers is basically if we draw any kind of a shape on the page, we'll see it appears here. And then we can interact with it and select it. So if I draw another one, we can see here that rectangle 2 is on top of rectangle 1. And that means if I change color, put it over here, it's going to appear on top, but I could drag it down here and it would appear beneath. So you can really get specific in organizing things. Then this bar across the top, this is like your toolbar. We'll go through these as we build out our example. We have our select tool, our frame tool, our shape tool, so we can draw any kind of shape we want to build our UI, a pen tool, which will allow us to freeform draw any shape. We can add text and a couple of other things in here. But don't worry, you're going to see what we need as we go through this, okay? Over on the right hand side, this is the properties of anything we've drawn. So this rectangle here, I can see its position in here on the canvas. I can see the size dimensions, which I could increase if I wanted to. Things like rounded corners, fancy things like that, as well as, you know, color and stuff like that. And we can give it any kind of color that we want. And a couple of other elements in here, like a stroke. So if we wanted to give it a border, we could. We have some effects here if we want to add a shadow, things like that. All good. And we can export as a picture if we wanted to. But don't worry about any of that for the moment, okay? I'll just get rid of all of this. So let's start, right? We want to build this hero web part. So our web part consists of tiles, okay? And in Figma, we're going to create the tiles first. So we'll create two variations. We'll create this wide version here, and we'll create this smaller version here. And think of them like building blocks or like Lego. So once we create them, we can reuse them again and again and just basically drop them into a frame, and then we can build a hero web part in any configuration we want. Building our tiles, what we're going to want to do is come up here and we're going to select frame, and you're just going to click and drag here. It doesn't really matter how big you drag it because we're going to set that manually. So when we do, we have our frame, and let's just give it a name. So double click there and we'll call it wide tile. And now we're going to come over to our properties panel with this selected, and we're going to say the width is going to be 603 and the height is going to be 224. So that's the size of our tile. So now what we're going to do is we're going to add in the background so we can add in the image. So I'm going to go up here to the shape tool and I'm going to say rectangle, and I'm just going to draw it in here. And what we're going to do is we're going to fill this with an image, and that's the image that we can change again and again if we want. So to do that, again, make sure you've selected your rectangle here. Come over to fill, and over here we're going to see an option for an image. So you come in here, hover over this part, click choose image, and then choose an image that you want. I just happen to have one ready here, but you can choose any image you want. So I've put that in there. So now we have a fill in our rectangle, which is our image, which looks great. So the next thing we want to do is we need to add a little gradient overlay on this. So basically it'll be darker down here and lighter up here. And that's so when we put our text on top of it, it'll be readable no matter what image sits beneath, okay? So to do that, again, we're coming up to our rectangle tool. We're going to draw our rectangle again. And now when we come over to fill, we're going to choose gradient, okay? So this gives us this control here where we can set the colors and opacity. So I'm going to click the bottom one here and I'm going to drag the color all the way down to black and I'm going to bring it up to 75%, okay? And then I'm going to click the top one. I'll change that to black as well, but I'm going to make it fully see-through. So I'll drag this all the way back down to 0. Okay, when you've done that, you can click X here. Now this gradient is probably a bit strong. So what I'm going to do is where I have my fill, still selecting rectangle 2, I'm going to set this to 50. And that lightens it a bit, which is a bit nicer. So we're nearly there. There's one more component in this tile, which is the text that sits on top. So to get text in there, I'm going to click the text tool here, and I'm just going to click anywhere and pop in my text there, okay? Now this text came in formatted perfectly for me, but you'll put your text in here and the font might be a bit small, it might be a different font than you want. The way to change all of that is select the text that you've just put in here, okay? And then over on the right hand side, you'll see the text here and you'll see all of the things that you can change with the text. And you'll be used to these. They're the same as what you typically get in Word or anything like that. So we obviously have our font in here. I'm using Segoe UI because that matches the font that's in SharePoint. I've set it to semi-bold, but you could play around with this if you want a different font weight. I'll leave it at semi-bold. The font size is 28. And we have a line height of 36. So if you are going to add in more than one line, so if we wanted to add in a second line, I can just hit return and I can say here is a second line, okay? So if I do that and select all of this, changing this will obviously change the line height, okay? So 36 is the default for this font size here, so that's fine. I'm just going to get rid of that second line in there. And so that's our tile, okay? So that's perfect, that's ready to go. So next thing we want to do is we want to make it an asset, okay? So we looked at the layers tab, so this is all of our layers in here. Assets is where we take something we've created and make it a reusable asset within Figma. And the way to do that is we say wide tile, we select that, come up here where it says create component, and now we have that as a component, which will mean if I come into assets, it's here, and when we start building out our web part, we'll just be able to drag this on. We can drag as many as we want to build up our tiled effect, okay? It'll work like that. So that's where it'll get really fun. So let's just get rid of these lads for now, we don't need them, and we'll keep this fella here, our component, right? So the next thing we need to do is we need to make what's called a variation of this, okay? So if we look here at the web part in action, we can see that when I'm not going anywhere near it, it looks one way, but when I hover over a tile, it looks another way. So that's what we need to create next, okay? So in Figma makes it very easy to do that, right? So what we do is we select our wide tile and we come up to this icon up here that is called add variant. So I'm going to click that, and now we can see that wide tile has two variations, the default one and our hover one, okay? So where you'll see that come into play is if we've selected our wide tile, we come over here and we see it has properties, okay? So what we can do is rename these to make them a bit more meaningful. So if I double click property 1, I can change that to state, which is going to be what's the state of the tile. And if I click on this one here, the top one, this state is the default one. So that's when nobody's hovering over it or anything like that. It looks like this. And then we can click on this one and we can say the state of this one is going to be hover, okay? So that will be when we hover over it, we're going to see this. So they look the same, right? So if someone did hover over it, they wouldn't see any difference. So we need to make a difference to this one to show that interaction. So how we do that is we click here, and what we're going to want to do is come back over to layers, okay? So we're in the hover one and we're going to select the rectangle image behind because we want that image to grow basically when someone clicks on it. So when you've selected this, you're going to hit K on your keyboard, which will bring up the scale panel here, okay? And we're just going to give this a subtle increase in size to 1.1, okay? So hit enter. So we can see here that the background image has grown slightly, okay? okay? So that's brilliant now. Now we have everything we need to make this work so that someone hovers over, they get this. So you're still with me, you're doing great, don't worry, this is a lot to take in first time, but as you build this out yourself, it's gonna make sense to you and you'll be flying in no time, trust me. So we have our wide tile and that looks brilliant. We're gonna repeat the process again, but just for a tile of a different dimension, okay? So like I said, repeat the process. So now we want another tile. So I'm gonna come up here to my frame. Again, I'm gonna click and drag. It doesn't really matter what size because we'll fix all that, but we're gonna call this small tile. And the dimensions we want for this fella is gonna be 300.5 by 224. So just like before, we're going to come up here, we're going to select our rectangle and we're just going to draw the shape. Don't worry about matching it exactly to it, okay? If you drew it like this, that's fine. You come here to the edge where you get this double-sided arrow and you can click and you can drag that, and the smart guides within Figma are going to keep you honest, okay? So you just bring up to that corner and we'll bring this fella down to this corner. And then we're going to come over to fill when we've selected our rectangle, change it to image, choose image, I'll choose hero 2, and we get that nice little background, okay? And then we need to add in our gradient again like we had before. Now, a handy way to do this, we've already done the work, so let's reuse it. So in our layers panel where we have wide tile, we can see our gradient here. So if you click that gradient and you say Control C, and then you click your small tile and then you type Control V, we'll see that it came in here, okay? Now, obviously it was a different size up here than it is here. So we can just come out here, get the double-sided arrow again and click and drag this in so it matches our tile. And similarly, we'll do the exact same thing with the text. So again, in any of our wide tiles where we have our text, select it, Control C, select our small tile frame, Control V, and we get this in here like this. Now again, you can see it's gone off the screen, so we can use a double-sided arrow to just bring this in, and then you can position it however you want. You might even drop the size down because we're a smaller tile. So if I say 24, which looks good, drop this down here like so, and that looks pretty good. And now it's a case of doing our component and variant as we did before so we can use it. So that's great. So now we have our two tiles, right? You're doing fantastic, okay? So these are going to be the reusable tiles that we can use again and again. If we see in assets, we've got a small tile and we've got a wide tile. So the next thing is to actually build the web part, okay? So to build a web part, we need to again create another frame. So select frame and just drag out, don't worry about the size, and rename this to Hero Web Part plus 6 tiles. Okay, so we have that in there, that's great. And now we'll just resize it a little bit. So the size we want is 1209 by 450. So we're looking good. And now it's the easy part. Right now we just start to build this out. So I'm going to zoom in. So if I hold Alt and kind of scroll in on the scroll wheel, that'll work. Or I could just choose this bit up here, which will also work. But now we have this canvas and let's just build out. So I want 2 wide tiles. So I'm going to select that one there, drag it into there, and then I can just position it to wherever it makes sense here. Do the same here. Okay, and then we have 4 of these little fellas. So I'll bring this fella up here. Bring this fella over here. You can see it's very easy, right? We're just dragging and dropping to build our web part. And build this fella over here. And the same with this fella here. Okay, and very quickly you can see you've built your web part, okay? Or at least the look of it. So at this point, take a breath and marvel at your work. It looks fantastic. If you find that some of the gaps aren't just perfect the way you like them, you can always zoom in and you can just shift things around manually till you get it just perfect the way you like it, which looks pretty good there, right? So we've built our web part in terms of it looks like a web part. Now we got to work on the prototyping element of it within Figma, and that's where we're going to be able to bring it to life and embed it within our page, okay? So to do that, right, what we want to do is we want to add in that interaction that when I hover over this, it's going to change to our hover state. So we'll do that for all of the tiles, okay? So what you want to do is over here in the properties panel, we've been on the design one so far. We want to flick this over to prototype, which gives us some additional options, okay? So the first thing that we're going to do in here, okay, select our hero web part, and where it says flow starting point, we're going to click the plus and we're going to say this is our hero web part plus 6 tiles, okay? So that means we're going to be able to use this as a prototype just as it is here. The next thing we want to do is we need to go to each of these tiles one by one. We select this one and we're going to add an interaction, okay? So if I hit the plus there, it's going to say, well, what is the interaction you want? Well, we want, okay, when we are hovering over this tile, we want you to change it to our hover state, okay? And there where we have instant, set this to smart animate, which will make it change nicely. So you've done that, that's perfect. You just repeat this for all of the other ones. So again, an interaction, which is going to be when someone's hovering, I want you to change to our hover state. And I want that to happen in a nice animated manner. So you do that for all of them, okay? So once you've done that, you're 99% of the way there, okay? So let's look at it in action, okay? So what we can do, we can select this here while we're in prototype, and do we see this little play button? Let's just click that, okay? So that's gonna open up a new tab. It's gonna load up our prototype, and we can see now that when we hover over these things, they're looking good, right? We get that hover. So that's brilliant, okay? So come back over to your other tab, and we're going to change one other thing in here, which is going to be select anywhere on the canvas, which is not this, okay? And we're going to change the background of our prototype to white, okay? We had that to white. And if you go back to the tab, which is your prototype, we'll see now that this is going to embed nicely within a SharePoint site with a white background. The last thing you're going to probably want to do now is change the images on each of these tiles, because we want that collage effect. So the way you can do that is if we come back over here to the design tab, we select any tile we want to change the image for. So let's choose this fella here. And over in our layers panel, expand the tile and you'll see the rectangle with the picture symbol. So that's where we can change it. So we've selected that, come over here to fill, select, hover over this, choose image, and then just start adding in your images. So again, we'll pick a different tile, over to the layers panel, drop it down, select the rectangle, come over to fill, choose image, and like magic, this is starting to come to life. So I'll just change the other two tiles now, and that is looking pretty good, if I do say so myself. So you also might want to change the text, right? So to do that, you're just going to pick the text and then type in whatever you want. So straightforward enough there. So again, if we look at the prototype tab, we can see that it all works very nice, looks good, and is interacting nicely. And the last thing to do is then to make it functional. So if we embedded it in our SharePoint site as it is now, it would look great, it would interact nicely, but it wouldn't actually do anything, right? It's not linking to anywhere. So we can do that now. Come back over in here to our canvas, and let's go back into the prototype tab. And now we're going to add in another interaction to our tiles. Okay, so what you want to do is you want to select each individual tile one by one. We'll start with the first one here, and we're going to add an interaction. So before we said when someone hovers over it, we wanted to change state. Now we want it when someone clicks on it, we want to go to open link, okay? And then you can type in or paste in your link to whatever SharePoint pages or whatever link you want it to go to. You just paste the link in there and you're good to go. So you do that to all of the tiles, and then it'll be fully functional. It'll work just like the hero web part. So at this point, give yourself a massive pat on the back. You're now officially a UI designer, and you now have a brand new skill that's going to put you heads and shoulders above everybody else. And the last piece in this puzzle is to get it into our SharePoint site, okay? So let's go over to our site, and there's a change we need to make to the site settings to make this possible, okay? So what you're going to want to do is you're going to come up to the cog, you're going to go to Site Information, click on View All Site Settings, and in here, you're looking for this area in Site Collection Administration called HTML Field Security. Now you need to be the site owner to do this, okay? So when you're in here, basically this page is saying what websites should SharePoint allow you to embed content from. Effectively, that's what it's saying. So in here, we're going to type in figma.com and we're going to say add. And now we'll see down the bottom, we have figma.com in here. So that just means that now we can embed our prototypes. Brilliant. So just say okay. So I'm going to come back to the home page, and what we're going to do is we're going to take this out of here. We're going to embed our brand new prototype. So first we need to get the prototype embed code. So to do that, you just go back to Figma, view your prototype. So you can select this fella here and click play, which brings us in here. And then what you want to do is you want to click this button up here that says share prototype. So if I click that, I come in here, and what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to change this can edit to can view. Now, because we signed up with a free account, we can't really use this view prototype thing, okay? But don't worry, that's where our magic code will come in to get around this little inconvenience. So come here, can edit, change it to can view. And then what we're going to do is we're going to say get embed code, okay? So you just want to copy all of this and head back to our SharePoint site. So now that we're here, we're just going to edit the page. We'll delete this fella out of here. We don't need him anymore. So here we go. Right, so what we want to do is we're going to add in our web part. and we're going to go for the embed web part, which looks good. We'll get this interface over here. Just going to pop your code that you pasted, the embed code, in here. Click out of here and then give it a second and we'll see what it looks like without any changes. Okay, so it comes in like this. Now this is not ideal, right? Because we have reference to Figma in here and we'll have a border around it. So the things we want to change are in this embed code here. Let me just drag it down. Over here we have iframe style and we have a border, right? So let's just take that out. So after that colon there, I think that's what it's called, come over here and you're going to get rid of all of that, right? So you just have this and then you're going to say none, okay? That's going to get rid of the border. And now to get rid of all of the Figma framing that sits around this, what we're going to do is we're going to add in another piece of code. And so that code for hiding all of the frame that goes around this is in here. After you see capital D and then design and then the quotation marks, right after the end of the word design, you're going to paste in this piece of code here, which is this fella here. I'll put that in the description, right? So you don't have to read it and type it, but that's effectively going to hide all that reference to Figma, okay? Now our iframe here is a bit high, so what I might do is drop that down to 375, which gives us something like this, which is a bit better. So when you've added that in, that's really all you have to do. So I'm going to republish the page. And now we have our hero web part on our page seamlessly. No one would ever know it's not SharePoint. Apart from, right, and here's a little caveat, right, is this cookies thing. This apparently is a bug within Figma that when prototypes are embedded, you get this allow cookies. Now, if you happen to be signed into Figma in the browser that you're viewing SharePoint in, you won't see this, right? You'll accept it once and it'll go away. But for people who are not signed in, they'll see that. And you can judge for yourself whether that's too much of a pill to swallow or not. I expect Figma will fix it, but at the moment it seems to be there. And so there you have your web part. It looks fantastic. You'll be able to click it, go to the links, all that good stuff. And nobody will ever know it's not SharePoint, right? So congratulations, you are officially awesome. So there you have it. Well, look, this started out for me personally as a bit of fun. I wanted to experiment and see what I could do with Figma prototypes, bringing them into SharePoint, and I was quite pleased with the results. The million-dollar question is, would I actually use this in a SharePoint intranet or any site really within SharePoint? And the answer is yes, but it would depend on the location. So I don't think I would use this on the homepage of an intranet or somewhere that's that high profile, okay? For me, the cookies that pop up would be a deal breaker on that front. However, I would absolutely use this on a feature page or a sub page within the intranet. I think it's particularly good for engagement. So we saw the process example that we can really bring processes to life or anything like that to just give people a little bit more than a static image or text description. I'm quite fond of the Hero Web Part Plus, I must say. I really like the flexibility of being able to essentially have this box of Lego of assets within Figma and just building the web part out any way I want. I think one thing to bear in mind is the maintenance of this going forward. So I think it would be worth creating a project within Figma where you keep any of these prototypes that you make and sharing it with maybe one or two others in edit mode. So, you know, if you win the lotto or something like that, they can take up where you left off. Editing the links and the text will always be done within Figma. So it's important to remember where you created it in the first place. So look, I hope you found this interesting. I certainly did. You can expect to see more from me on this. Let me know in the comments how you've used it, if you have used it, or any ideas that you might have to use it. If you like this video, please like and subscribe. And until the next one, see ya.